Hey guys, we're gonna be back on the farm today. I know the last two videos I was working on my truck, but I told you when I started this channel that it was gonna be a building of the farm and building barns and building fences and all that type of stuff, but I also said it was gonna be anything in between. And when my truck broke, it was kind of dead in the water and I had to get it fixed. So that's why those two videos of what was going on with my truck. So, but anyway, today we're going to be back on the farm, and super exciting. We are going to be boring a well for the arrival of the windmill in the next few weeks. Not going to get too much into the windmill. We'll cover that in another video real soon, so make sure you stay tuned for that. But today we're going to be boring a well because we want the windmill to actually be pumping water. We don't want it to just be up there as a whirlybird. And it will be pumping water for the mules out in the field. So it's going to be really cool. The reason I'm videoing this in the truck is because the windmill guys, the well guys called and said that they were on their way. So they're going to be sitting at the gate when I pull up. So I'm not going to have time to tell you what's going on because they're already going to be there. But the story that I've gotten from them so far is that the windmill guy said that we needed about 5 gallons per minute for the windmill. He said that was adequate for the windmill to pump and not pump the well dry. So, right at 5 gallons a minute minimum. So the well guy is thinking we need to go down about 150 feet. We've got to get below the bedrock, and the bedrock is going to be somewhere between 50 and 60 feet down. It's going to be a 6-inch bored well. It's going to have a PVC liner or a PVC casing, and that casing is going to go to the bedrock. Once it gets to the bedrock, the lining will be no longer, because the bedrock will be the lining. And the reason the lining is in there is because you've got all the surface water and all the groundwater that runs a strong risk of being contaminated. Put the liner in there to keep all that groundwater from running into the well, and then it also keep all the silt and everything from going in. And then he said we needed to get through the bedrock, which I don't know how thick the bedrock is. I'll ask that when we get out here. And he said he thought we needed to get about 10 feet below the bedrock because that's where the water is. So a typical well in this part of Georgia, for a house or for a business, is about 300 feet. And I don't know how many gallons per minute that is, but he said that was adequate for a business or for a residential house. So we don't have to go that far. So he's thinking, like I said, 150 feet. So that's about all I know for now. The rest of it we'll find out when we get out here. So let's go out here and see what's going on. Okay, so they're here getting set up. I talked to the company owner, and he said that once they got down into the bedrock, he said they'd never get out of the bedrock. He said they'd be in the bedrock nonstop. He said all the water's in the cracks inside the bedrock. So we got to go 50 feet, 60 feet down to the bedrock. And then he's thinking we got to go 10, 20 feet into the bedrock to get to 5 gallons per minute. So this thing's going to be loud, so I'm not going to be able to ask them a whole lot of questions. So we're just going to set this up and watch what happens. Okay, so I had to get away from there. It was pretty loud. But each one of those sticks is 20 feet long. So the head is 5 feet long, and then they're screwing a 20-foot stick on there. They're drilling down, and then they're adding another 20-foot stick to it. So they're just going to keep doing that until they get down to water. And you see that they're scooping up all the dirt and putting it behind a piece of board. They're building a dam so that once they hit water, they can time how long that dam fills up. I don't know that there's an exact science to it, but somehow the water's going to come out. The hammer has got a real high pressure air on it, and it's blowing everything, all the dirt and all the rock chips and everything out from the bottom of the hole. And once they hit water, it'll start blowing that water out. That water will start filling up that dam that they're building, and then somehow they're timing that. I'm not real sure how. But so I'm going to go back over there, and they're going to be adding 20-foot sticks to it every time they get down 20 more feet. So that's what you're seeing. Starting to hit rock, and we're also hitting mud. Looks like it's getting a little looser. I don't know what kind of water mud they're getting into, but they're coming down pretty quick, so I don't think they're in any real serious rock yet. They must just be getting to it. He's going down pretty fast. Getting pretty wet though. When that gets all the way down to the bottom, another 20 feet. Alright, so they pulled about 110 feet of pipe out, plus the 5-foot head, the drill head. Now they're going to be driving this 20-foot sticks of PVC down in there as a liner, and they're going to drive this down to the bedrock. So I'm assuming they're done, because he's put all the drills up. Like I said, he pulled out about 115 feet by my guess. We'll see if I'm right. But like I said, I thought we were getting pretty close. You see this mud went from a red to a little bit lighter, then to a gray, then to a light, and it got really light, but it's just kind of blended in. But you saw how much water was coming out of that apron there. So this is 20 foot 20 foot more, so that's going to be 40 foot. So we'll see. All right, so what they're telling me is they've drilled down to the bedrock about 100 feet down. So they missed that by about 40 feet, it looks like, that estimate. They're putting this casing in, and then they're gonna put a water drilling head on there that's gonna go down through the rock, and then they're gonna start drilling for the water. So the mud is filling it in, so they're having to push it down with the hydraulics, push it down in there, and then they're going to wash it out with fresh water, get all that mud out of that pipe, and then that way when they start drilling, all that mud isn't filling in the casing when they hit water. So they're just prepping and getting ready for the actual drill now. All right, he's running the drills back in, and he's up to about 80 feet. You can see the amount of water that he's blowing out of that hole. And that's not mud, that's water. That's running water. So that hole that he drilled, it's filled up. So that's a real good sign. I don't think we're too far. Like I said, that's 80 feet right there. He's gonna pick up the next stick. It's amazing to me that that air hose that's on the end of that drill is blowing out all of that mud and all of that water from all the way down in the bottom of that hole. You know, when he was driving that PVC down in there, the inside of that PVC was getting filled up with mud and water and everything. He's drilling it all, and he's blowing it all out. And that's what you're seeing. So it's pretty amazing to me that there's that much air pressure to blow it all the way up 80, 100, 100 plus feet up out of that hole. It's a lot of air. All right, so we're still drilling. What I had told you was wrong because they had not explained it to me, but the water that was coming out of that hole was water that they were blowing into the hole to clean it out. So they're down to about 240 feet right now, and they're putting on the 260 foot rod right now, but he's telling me that they're right at it. He can hear it, and he can see that the rock has changed. So he's telling me that this rod is going to be the money rod. So we'll see. I hope so. So we're back in the truck, headed back out to the farm. It got real dark on us last night, and it started raining, so we stopped drilling. I just wanted to cover a few things of what happened last night. We never got to 5 gallons a minute. So we got to 3 gallons a minute, according to them, at 500 feet. And very disheartening and frustrating. The well man, the well owner, who's a 75-year-old man, you know, been in the same place for 40 years plus, drilled thousands of wells in the county, has knows that area. That is in his backyard. We're 10 minutes from their business. He led me to believe that we would, you know, hit water anywhere from 150 to 300 feet. So I was going off of his 40 years of experience of drilling in that county and drilling thousands of wells, that, you know, that he was going to be pretty accurate. He said we would hit bedrock at 50 feet to 60 feet. His averages were way off the board. They weren't even on the board. You know, it's supposed to be $12 a foot for a 6-inch bored well. I'm sorry, a 6-inch drilled well. There's a difference between a bored well and a drilled well, and I've been calling it a bored well this whole video, which I'm going to clarify in a few minutes. But he told me it was going to be a 6-inch drilled well with a PVC lining, and it was going to be $12 a foot, and that we would be somewhere between 150 to 300 feet. He was pretty comfortable. So I was basing all of my numbers off of that. And the day before they showed up, he sent a contract over that evening after I had agreed to everything in a handshake. And the contract said it was $12 a foot, but it was $4 additional a foot for the PVC lining, the casing. So I called him up and asked him about that, and he said, oh, well, that's, I might have forgotten to mention that. Well, you didn't might have forgotten, you just didn't say it. And you can't put a well in without the casing. So why don't you just say it's $16 a foot? Well, the reason he didn't is because the casing only goes to the bedrock, which is only for the first 50 to 60 feet per his guesstimation. Well, so I said, okay, well, so that's 200 feet. I mean, $200 additional. So I was like, okay, well, I felt like he should have said something rather than wait till the last hour, you know. And if you don't put that liner in, then all of the surface water and everything and all the groundwater, it turns to mud and it just caves in the cavity. So you've got to have a casing until you get down to the bedrock, and then the bedrock becomes the casing. And so anyway, that's why all that mud was coming up, because that was all the dirt mixing with the groundwater. In any event, we didn't hit bedrock at 50 to 60 feet. We hit bedrock at 115 feet. So that took that $200 to over $400 for the casing. Then we got down into the bedrock. He told me, well, we're only going to have to go about 10 feet into the bedrock to get you to the amount of water that you need. Well, we got, you know, almost 400 feet into the bedrock and only got to 3 gallons of water. Well, again, I'm going off of his experience of drilling wells in that county, drilling thousands of wells. I'm not saying he misled me intentionally. He did say, you know, we just never know. And, you know, it could be deeper, but he repeatedly said, you know, I think 150 to 300 feet. So that's what's going on in my mind. If I've got experience and I tell you from my experience, based on my experience, this is what, you know, we typically run into, and then only say, but it could be deeper. You only say that one time in the conversation, and you say 150 to 300 feet repeatedly and kind of plant that seed in your head. In my opinion, they overpromise and underdelivered, and I would rather underpromise and then overdeliver, because I expressed my frustration and my disappointment with him. He wasn't apologetic over it. He just said, well, you just never know. But that drilling rig was a monster, and that thing had to have been well into the 6 digits. And he had 2 of those trucks. Plus he had multiple Ford F-350s, F-450s, F-550s, dual axle, dual wheel trailers, and all kinds of support equipment on those trailers. So he's got, not only does he have 2 rigs that are well into the 6 digits, he's got hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of support equipment and support vehicles. But no water detecting equipment. Why these well companies don't invest in one device that, you know, the geological surveyor guys use, that they cost about $7,000 from what I saw online, and they can detect water underground, and they're about $7,000. They come out to your site to do a site survey before they ever bring their equipment out there to make sure there's no overhead wires, make sure, you know, there's no obstructions, no fences, make sure they can get through the gate, make sure there's no ditches, they can get their truck to the well site, make sure there's no buildings, etc., etc., etc. So when that guy comes out, you know, why can't he bring a $7,000-8,000 piece of equipment that they can, you know, ground radar penetrate, or however those things work, the ground, and say, look, there's water here, but it's going to be 700-800 feet down, or whatever it is, you know, or yes, there's water here and it's going to be 150 feet down, rather than just leaving it, you know, wide open to make the customer frustrated. Because once you get to the 150 foot mark and you're not at any water, what choice do you have? They've got you over a barrel. You know, you can't just say, well, I'm just not gonna just cancel this. I'll just give you thousands of dollars to bore a hole that's 150 feet and there's no water. So they got you over a barrel, so you got to keep going. So we stopped at 500 feet just because it was just getting cost prohibitive. And we were in the water, like I said, about 3 gallons a minute. I called the windmill guy, and the windmill guy said he could make it work as long as the static level comes up in the well. And they claim that they went out there and that the 500 foot well has 480 foot of water in it. Now, in a traditional well, in today's wells, you put an electric pump all the way down in the bottom at the 500 foot. The well is the reservoir and it is pumping from the bottom. Well, the windmill doesn't do that because the windmill can't pull it from 500 foot up. So the windmill only goes about 15 to 20 feet below the static level, which is the top level. And so you really only have 20 feet of water for the windmill. And then once it gets below that, you know, the windmill is pumped the well dry. So that's why you're wanting 5 gallons a minute, so it can replenish that well so that the pump is always in the water. So he said he could make it work, he thought, as long as we did have 3 gallons a minute and as long as the static level was at 480 feet. So we'll see when we get out there what the static level actually is. So a little frustrating and a little disappointing. So if you're going to get a well done, you need to find out what the worst case scenario is, and you need to program your mental self for the worst case scenario so that anything less is a pleasant surprise, versus programming yourself for the best case scenario, which is what I did because he kept repeating the best case scenario. And this is what you're left with when they leave. Thousands of pounds of rock chips, rock dust, rock shavings, and mud. Now, if you don't have a skid steer or a tractor with a front end loader, it's going to take you a month of Sundays out here with a wheelbarrow and a shovel. So luckily I've got a tractor, so I'm going to scoop it up after it dries, give it a few days to dry, and then I'm going to put it around the foundation of my building over there that I, you know, moved out of the red mud puddle from over there. And that way it'll take up some of that area that I was going to put gravel in. But this stuff is dense. I mean, you can walk on it. Look at this. Look at that. So the water is about I didn't measure it, but it's about 20 feet down in there. So I'm gonna get my tape measure out and measure it, and we'll see. So this ended up being a little bit more expensive than I wanted it to, but when you gotta have a well, you gotta have a well. So, you know, you gotta do what you gotta do. But I kept calling this a bored well, and a bored well is a larger diameter well, typically 24 inches in diameter, lined with a concrete pipe, and it only goes down to the bedrock. So the bored well is capturing the groundwater and the surface water, where the drilled well, like this one, goes into the bedrock. So I apologize to everybody for calling it a bored well, and didn't want to mislead you, so I wanted to get that straightened out. And hope you learned something. I surely did. And so we'll get this windmill, get this all cleaned up, and get this windmill in here. And once that windmill's up there turning, pumping water for the mules, this exercise and frustration will all be behind us. So anyway, see you on the next one. Thank you.